Christina Swallow, one and I'm excited to share. I met many of you, and I first sat down with a lot of you 2 years ago when I was new in the role as Director of Business Development Services. So it's been a few years since I've engaged with the environment of two big members. A year after that, so last fall, I stepped into an assistant city manager role, and Corin took over as the interim director of planning development services. And we thought, and I know a lot of you had some conversations with Tim. I think a year ago, last summer, there was some conversations with Tina as he was starting roles, and we wanted to take some time before the opportunity to talk to you about what's been going on in the last year, where they're looking to go moving forward. There's been changes in our organization. Planning development services now have code enforcement, and how they're working on integrating that and making that really a community success and tool and benefit. And so I want to just say hi. Thank you all for spending your time with us this evening. I know you give a lot to your neighborhoods and your communities, and so I appreciate you spending the time with us and listening. And I think we're really excited to hear some of your feedback as we have the conversation tonight. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Corin.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you all for being here. So so many different neighborhoods across the city, and so I'm Corin Manning, interim director at Planning and Development Services, and I'm joined tonight by several staff at Planning and Development Services who are also here to provide information and resources. So the PDSD folks, raise your hands, most from the back. And around the front, so building official, also Juan Garcia, building official, Dan Thompson, planning administrator, Kristen, Sarah, facility team, Rebecca, our neighborhood specialist, Juan, Chris, Blue, our specialist as well, and Aaron, amazing media specialist, public information specialist, and Eva from our public information officer, as well as Lisa Questis, who you saw also getting in, our management coordinator, and Lori Humphrey and Bernie Stevens, our code enforcement managers. That was a lot of folks. You will see some of these folks throughout the evening as we present and share a little bit about planning and development services, what we do, and most especially what resources and tools we need and also neighborhoods, and how we would like to get more feedback on ways we can better partner with you and your neighborhoods to serve your constituents and the neighbors in your community. So tonight really is meant to be a forum for us to share a bit, definitely hear your feedback. So we're going to go through a few different areas of planning and development services, neighborhood resources, and enforcement. And we hope to have plenty of time for questions and discussion. We'll also have time for some questions about the presentation. So before we get started, some agreements that we would ask you all to adhere to throughout the evening when making comments, sites. Allow others to speak without interrupting. Allow others to speak before you make another comment, and be respectful to others and different viewpoints. Okay, we're going to start off with a question for all of you. So, how many of you have done Mentimeter before, or a similar kind of survey tool? Okay, so if you have a phone with you that can scan QR codes, please get it out and you can scan the QR code that is out here. You can also go to menti.com and enter the code here. And if you don't, we would invite you to use one of the comment cards and you can respond to the question that we're going to have on the screen in just a minute. You can respond to do that rather than use the online form. It's just the online form and be able to show you the results in real time. Okay. So we're going to get the QR code. Feel free to walk up to the front if you just get closer. All right. Folks able to get on? Yes? Okay. This is some headphones. We'll give folks another minute. I also see some devices still pointing that way. Back from So next one is my mentee. Okay, next I advance to the question. All right. So our question to start off with tonight is, how does your neighborhood interact with planning and development services? We'd love to hear first just some of the ways we work with our department. What are some of the resources or tools we neighborhood is already utilizing in their business?
So, where?
And also at the top, there's that code is still up there. So if you go to menti.com, you can use code 7859-2969. To respond.
Well, what if we work with a different department?
You can put that too. Maybe mention another city department I can work with, whether it's transportation or parks. That's fine. We are very disciplined in our city. That's one of our roles in neighborhood resources is to help neighborhoods connect with other city departments. Okay, some of the things I'm seeing already. Well, one that stood out in the middle is we don't. So thank you. We know that a lot of neighborhoods don't actually, and that's one of the reasons we like this support is because we want to make sure everyone walks away tonight with some idea of the resources you can utilize for our department, and we would love to be a resource for the neighborhood. So some of the other ways people interact with planning and development services, neighborhood plan, creating a neighborhood plan. That is something we're going to talk about tonight. Meeting speakers. So we do have speakers going to neighborhood associations to talk about plan Tucson and many other topics. We were told no help is available. Incorrect. So we hope to correct that information tonight. There is help available. Research new development in our neighborhood, absolutely. We have some great tools that we want to cover and give you a little taste of tonight. We're new, so have not utilized the planning and development services yet. Awesome. Great that you're here tonight to learn more. Knowledge, individual neighbors on making improvements here. Awesome. Beyond forming a new neighborhood association, none yet, as far as I know. Great. I love hearing that there's some new neighborhood association and new leadership here. We report code violations, provide input on planning surveys, attend community meetings. Awesome. Sounds like a very active neighborhood association. Aside from attending planning and development services meetings, not much else. We'll hopefully give you some more ideas. And we speak with Rebecca. Absolutely. I'm sure many of you connect with Rebecca on a regular basis. Again, she's our neighborhood engagement, neighborhood liaison and neighborhood engagement specialist. So it looks like we have 36 responses. I'm not sure if you can see them all. I just okay. Thanks, Sina. Not sure I can scroll from this to scroll.
Maybe it goes down. Use your
Fine.
arrows. Just use your arrow.
But it looks like we have a lot more.
Use your arrow, not the cursor.
The arrow.
Use the arrow, not the cursor.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So I'll just read a couple of them. I don't think we're gonna be able to show them on the larger screen, but know that we will review all of these afterwards. So as a neighborhood president, I find Rebecca and Christopher to be an invaluable resource. Awesome. Development of vacant lots, mailings, mostly online on the website or 311 app. That is fantastic. Assistance reestablishing our neighborhood association, code enforcement, permits for infrastructure projects, code violations, Grant Albany area plan. That is great to hear. Transportation, greenway bike path, contacting code enforcement, and we work with Rebecca when we have a problem. She is great. With Rebecca. Awesome. Those are just a smattering of some of the comments. So thank you all for responding. And again, we will review all this. This input is now, we now have it in empty. Okay, so thanks for giving us a sense of kind of how you guys have worked with planning and development services already. So what does planning and development services do? What is our department all about? So we have a number of different roles and functions in the city that are all kind of encapsulated in our mission statement, which is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents and visitors and enhance the quality of life in Tucson through professional planning, site and building review, and inspection services to ensure Tucson is a sustainable, well-designed, and prosperous community with a business-friendly environment. So this really encompasses the many facets of what we do, which is planning, looking at the long-term needs of our community and helping develop plans to address our needs as we grow and evolve as a community, permitting, helping make sure that all the building and development in our community is safe and well designed, inspections, both building inspections as well as code inspections. So we do this with a very an amazing team of staff. We have about over 100 staff at Planning and Development Services within a few sections. So I'll go through those different sections and we probably interact with these different groups in different capacities. So plan review and permitting is led by Juan Garcia, one of our building officials. Building and site inspections is led by Clayton Trevelyan, our other building official. Our current planning team, which is zoning and site review, is led by Elisa Hamblin, the zoning administrator. Long-range planning is led by Dan Bursick, our planning administrator. And code enforcement, hope to very shortly. And we have two managers in that section that we'll introduce shortly. And then business operations is led by Lisa, management team. So we have a really robust team that's carrying out all these different functions at PDSD. We're going to start by talking a little bit about the planning we do and how we help facilitate conversations in our community about our long-term goals and needs and develop plans to help us achieve those goals. So who attended the Plan Tucson meeting, working group, responded to a survey, any participation in Plan Tucson? Awesome. I think I see like at least 50%, maybe more of the hands up. So I'm very happy to hear that because we've been doing outreach for about 3 years now on Plan Tucson. And we've had a lot of different outreach events and forums to hear from community members about what's important to you in Tucson, what you think we need to prioritize over the next 10 years, what goals we should have in place and in this plan to help us achieve our vision for Tucson in the coming years. So the general plan is a state requirement that every jurisdiction will have a general plan. And it covers a range of issues to help us, again, plan long-term to our community. So it encompasses housing, transportation, economic development, water needs, environmental uses, environmental needs, etc. So it's a very all-encompassing plan. And we actually are getting towards the end of the process of updating our general plan. We started this in 2023 with a lot of listening sessions and community events to really hear our community's vision. Over the next few years, we developed that vision into a set of goals and policies, and through a lot of working groups and by hearing from our community through surveys, etc. And the plan was actually adopted by mayor and council this June. So with that adoption, the plan will now go to voters, to all of you, and it'll be on the ballot in November, November 4th, 2025. So really just a couple months away. So everyone in Tucson will have a chance to review this plan and consider adopting Plan Tucson as our next general plan.
How many pages in the plan?
The question is how many pages are in the plan? So I'm not sure if I know Ian was here earlier, maybe Ina or Aaron know, but it is at least, I want to say 200 pages. Okay, well we have an executive summary, which is a very slender 12 pages, I believe, with lots of pictures and graphics. Very easy to read executive summary that I highly recommend everybody look at on our website. And I think we have some flyers in the back on Plan Tucson too. So I'd encourage you to take a flyer, and that has a link to the website where you can learn more about Plan Tucson. So it is a lengthy document, and that's because it encompasses a lot of what we heard from our community. I really did hear a lot from folks about the key goals they felt were very important for our community. So I would say it's a kind of should your own mention. You can kind of get the high level if you like, and then on any topics that you want to dive deeper, maybe environmental issues or water, or housing, there's a lot of great information in that memo that goes over sort of what our community is already doing, some of the things that have been accomplished in the last 10 years, and then what the goals and policies are into the future. Any other questions on Plan Tucson?
What happens if it doesn't pass?
Great question. So it is a state requirement. So if it doesn't pass, we would still be utilizing our current general plan, but we would go back and need to make more revisions. And take it back to our community and try to hear, you know, what were some of the things that our community did not see reflected in that plan that they think is important. And then we would definitely make updates. So I will say this has we have had a lot of input on this general plan and heard from broad range of community groups, from a lot of our nonprofits and organizations in Tucson, environmental, social service organizations, business, industry groups, a very wide range of stakeholders who are all very involved in paying attention. So we really hope this does reflect what Tucsonians want to see for Tucson, but obviously if that's not what voters tell us in November, we will keep working on it.
Is there any money associated with that proposition?
Great question. The question is, is there any money associated? So the city has funded Plan Tucson just in terms of our staff time and things like that. But one thing sometimes people ask, does this mean taxes will increase or is there money spending associated with Plan Tucson? There is none. Plan Tucson does not change taxes, raise taxes, lower taxes. It does not compel the city to spend money on any particular projects over the next 10 years. It's really a policy document that's meant to be a framework and a guide for us moving forward. Okay, so please keep these dates in mind. Election day, November 4th, and early voting begins in October. And definitely, please visit the website to learn more. And we would love to come talk to your neighborhood association or any other community groups that you're part of. So you can see here this link. Where you can invite the Plan Tucson team to present to your neighborhood association. You can actually just go to the Plan Tucson website, which again is on the flyer in the back, and there is a link to this form so that you can request a speaker to come talk about Plan Tucson, and we can get into a lot more depth and talk about some of the specific policies in the plan. Okay, I'm going to move on from the general plan to a very related topic, which is area and neighborhood plans. So Eric, who here has an area or neighborhood plan that covers your neighborhood, if you know?
I'm not sure what you define by that.
Yeah, so we have a general plan that covers the whole city. And then we have area and neighborhood plans that cover specific neighborhoods. And the area and neighborhood plans are actually meant to support the general plan because the general plan is very broad. It covers the whole city. So it has very general guidance around land use and development. Neighborhood plans and area plans cover smaller areas. Most of our neighborhoods are about a square mile. Area plans generally encompass several neighborhoods. So for example, the Grand Mountain area plan encompasses 7 neighborhoods. Those have more detailed policy guidance that is actually more block by block. What land uses are supported in different portions of the neighborhood. And what type of development does the neighborhood want to see? So we have 42. Oh, okay. That number is under dispute. But we have, I think, almost 50 adopted area and neighborhood plans. These numbers say 17 area plans and 29 neighborhood plans. I think those are right. Oh, okay, you're saying the math doesn't add up. Okay, got it. So go with the lower numbers. Sorry, so we have almost 30 neighborhood plans adopted and 17 area plans. Question right now.
Are there multiple plans for the same neighborhood? For example, like we have a planned bikeway through our park, but is there another plan of something else for our neighborhood, or is that the plan?
Great question. This is a question about the bikeway plan in their neighborhood. So there are sometimes more specific plans like that. There's a transportation plan for a bikeway or sometimes a roadway might have an improvement plan associated with that roadway project. Those are different. That's really more a transportation plan. These are generally land use plans and they cover other aspects as well. But there's some policies related to transportation or open space and other things. But they're generally focused on land use. But I think one of your questions was, could you have both? And there are some neighborhoods that have neighborhood plans and they're within an area plan. Bro?
Por su parte, mi nombre working with Menlo Park. Ours is the oldest there, it's 2019. There's pieces of it that we're still hoping to complete. But I understand that current conditions and the history could be released. And we're wondering if that could be done. And there's interest in completing the plan totally on our side. Any
Use.
An update? Yes. So Earl was asking about an update on the Menlo Park neighborhood plan, which was initiated by Town Council in 2019. Yeah, that is a whole new neighborhood plan that was starting, basically developed from scratch because there was no neighborhood plan. Menlo Park and various same number. So we are working on that and hope to have the product very soon that we can serve the neighborhood and really get across the finish line. I think we're very close. A few others that have been updates recently, not new plans, but some updated neighborhood plans are the Sam Hughes neighborhood plan, Broadmoor Broadway, and then the Grand Algernon area plan that encompasses 7 neighborhoods was also recently updated. And El Presidio is starting to work on their neighborhood plan update. The Mario Anita.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It has like the housing stock and how old everything is and it cost a lot of money, but it was never approved from the mayor. So what do we just?
So there's a couple like that that I'm aware of. Mario Anita and I think also Dunbar Spring has a neighborhood plan. I put that in quotes because they neither were adopted by mayor's council. They were done by the Droplet Institute a while ago. They say maybe 15, 20. Yeah, about somewhere than 20 years ago. So we're aware of those. I think there's still documents that the neighborhood can refer to for, taking a proposal maybe of, traffic calming or other initiatives to transportation or parks. That helps identify your neighborhood's goals that you've documented in a plan, but you're right that they would not be used for land use decisions like a rezoning that was to mayor council because they would not at the city. I think that's something you could consider. There might need to be some updates to that plan, given that it was done a while ago. Before it could be adopted, it needs to be some of our current standards in terms of developing, land use maps and things like that, but that's something that could be explored.
It's changed a lot, the fellows, developers, when they did long-term rentals, they lied, and they said, oh, we're gonna 5-year lease. People put their kids in Davis and they can stay there, and it's all those areas. One of them actually fake silver living houses, you had some those around the appearance. That's the city.
I think that.
So if somebody wants to develop a neighborhood, they have to go through planning and zoning.
Yes, we definitely encourage you to work with us because there is a process that needs to be followed that's in our unified development code. It actually defines what the process is to establish a neighborhood adopted by mayor and council. So like this example from Marinita, you would want to follow those steps to make sure it is something that can be adopted by mayor and council. It actually has to get initiated by mayor and council at the beginning and then go through a public process to ensure there's broad public input into the plan. And then it needs to go through some formal review steps.
It's very fascinating just to read it, because the house is old and,
I'm gonna go back here. I haven't seen.
How do you know if your neighborhood has a plan already?
Okay, how do you know if your neighbor has a plan already? We have that on a website called Mount Tucson. We'll actually touch on Mount Tucson in just a little bit. Because it is a great resource for neighborhoods. We definitely encourage you to go to Mount Tucson and explore some of the resources there. And you can very easily see whether you are in an area or neighborhood plans. Okay, we're gonna move on to some other aspects of planning that we do with planning and development services. One of which is home development. So the city has a lot of codes that govern development and how sites can be developed, the uses that are allowed, what density, what height, how much parking, how the site can be utilized, and a lot of that is in our zoning. And zoning is we often need to update it as we see uses emerging. As we New business types, so for example, data centers, that's not a use we were seeing just 4 or 5 years ago, and now it really is growing, so we need to address that in our zoning code. Adapting to technologies or implementing policy, so for example, there's a lot of focus on housing, affordable housing now in our city. So we've made a lot of changes to our zoning code in recent years to make it easier to build more housing and more affordable housing. So I'm working on a few code updates at the moment. One is related to middle housing, which is duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and townhouses. So smaller format housing that can be easier to build on smaller lots and can be more affordable. Also data centers and low impact development standards. I want to mention middle housing because we are in the middle of developing this right now. So we need a lot of your input. Now is really the time to learn about this proposal and share your feedback. So we have some events coming up next week, some meetings to share the current proposal and get feedback. 2 are virtual and 1 is in person. You can see those up here, and there's also a flyer with that.
So does the middle housing, updates include not just building new build, but renovating larger houses to smaller? Is that included in the zoning?
Great question. What he's asking if it includes not just new construction, but renovating homes and you're saying like dividing it and taking a large home now in 2 units. Yes, that would be included, and that's one of the things that with this zoning change would be possible, which right now, depending on your zoning, might be prohibited. That will definitely be an aspect.
How does this correspond like with the whole corridor tool that just been worked on?
The community corridors tool, yeah, that was adopted this spring. Great question. So the community corridors tool covers sites that are adjacent to a corridor. They actually have to have frontage on a corridor and be zoned for multifamily. So it generally applies to commercial and office zones, and there's a few other exceptions there. This would actually apply more in neighborhoods. So probably is most applicable on the interior of neighborhoods, not the main corridors, where there's other options to develop with housing on corridors using that tool. This would apply more in residential zones. Okay, I encourage everyone to learn more and come to these meetings.
Will that talk about zoning changes and something is R1, moving it to a more multifamily?
Yes, that will definitely be what we look at and share more about in these meetings is how middle housing code changes will allow middle housing, so to the 4 unit development in basically a certain geography of the city. Per state law, we're required to allow that within 1 mile of downtown. And based on community feedback, we developed a geography that we proposed for our middle housing, basically for the city.
Does that also include the putting of casitas on backyards and things like that?
Great question about the CETAs. That actually is a little different, but they're related because it's basically how we spur infill development and smaller scale residential. So there's a little bit of nuance into when casitas would be allowed versus middle housing, and that's something we can definitely get into at these meetings. And it really is kind of side by side and options that homeowners have. Casitas, I will say, is citywide. So now every site in the city is allowed to build an ADU or casita, and on most lots 2 casitas, sometimes 3. All right, I want to talk about entitlements because these are processes that often come to neighborhoods. You might sometimes get invited to a neighborhood meeting from a property owner or developer, or have the opportunity to attend a public hearing to talk about this. So understand entitlements, what does that mean? It's basically any sort of process of land use change that requires approval from our mayor and council or the zoning examiner. So it basically means there's a public process to review this and make a decision on property owners who wants to change their zoning or change a neighborhood plan to allow a development on their property, or in some cases allow a special exception to certain uses that are only allowed through a site-specific process to allow that use. These processes all do require a neighborhood meeting where adjacent properties and adjacent neighborhood associations are invited to a neighborhood meeting to learn about the proposal and share feedback with the developer. And that's a requirement for all of these. They also require, usually in all of these cases, require a public hearing with the zoning examiner or the planning commission, and in most cases also with mayor and council. So there's multiple opportunities for public input and comments along the way.
Oh, for sure, you can, Actually, we have really good news, because we got a grant from something, if you propose to plant trees along with the railroad square in our neighborhood, so we're gonna take something of the neighborhoods and stuff. It is something pretty, but we had to get an archaeological study for $7,000, and PB grants, Lane's grants helped us with that part of it. But, it's this, the lot next door to my house, has been argued for 30 years or so, it's zoned a whole bunch of different chunks, but the city owns it now. So is the zoning change like in that acre, or is it just come, when they give it to the city, is it just come with the zoning already? There's some of the stone industrial, some of the stone like residential.
Right. So we do have a number of sites that have split zoning where they have industrial, commercial, residential, all in one zone. How that works is that actually each of those zones do apply to the site. So the portion of the site that's zoned residential would have to be residential. The portion of the site that's zoned industrial would be industrial. But usually that each zone applies to the site. There are some options in that community corridor tool that you brought up, the new zoning tool, that allows for some flexibility on those split zone sites with certain uses. But for example, it would not allow industrial uses to be used in different portions of the site, but it does give some flexibility for residential uses, suffice to say, if they're split zoning.
We're trying to coordinate stuff, we're actually walking door to door, because last meeting we had, the guys, nice people from the city told us that they heard that we all wanted a parking lot in that. lot. So we've been, yes, yeah, so we've been, two elderly women have been walking door to door in 107 degrees.
Okay, I think I know the same talking.
Yes. Yes. That's like, it's a parking lot, it's not residential.
It's zoned for industrial right now, you're right, yeah, it does have some other zoning on it, so,
Well, they told us they're gonna brainstorm about it in August, but.
okay, yeah, we have heard some interest in discussing the future of that site, so that's something we can definitely connect on.
Because people want a parking lot, and not people, 3 people want a parking lot. There's a parking lot.
I'm sure we can think of places besides parking.
I can take the park,
That's awesome.
even a side light.
Okay, some other aspects in our planning division and certain processes that development might have to go through. In addition to the entitlements, which is rezoning, there's some other processes that also involve neighborhood input. So one of those is our special districts. These are districts that have specific goals, are put in place to help achieve specific goals for certain areas of the city, like our downtown area. We are the downtown infill incentive district to promote more transit-oriented infill development downtown. We have a few others like the Rio Nuevo area that also covers downtown and urban overlay districts on Broadway and Grant Road. And we also have neighborhood preservation zones in Belmont and Jefferson Park. So many of these, the downtown incentive districts, as well as most of those two urban overlay districts, also require a neighborhood meeting for any development to share their proposal with the community and get input for any major development. And the other districts also have opportunities for input through a design review or design review process. So these are things also to keep in mind if your neighborhood is close to the downtown area or one of these zones.
I live in Jefferson Park, and I've never heard of neighborhood preservation sounding like it.
Okay, well, there are a few, that's great to know, because that's something that you connect with your neighborhood association.
I'm on the neighborhood.
Well, we would love to do some education in that case. We would be happy to do that, because it's really important that residents know about this. Because it does require design review for any work that neighbors do to their homes, the exterior of their homes, so that's great.
Okay, so that part of it, in terms of work on homes, yes, we've had a few, things that we've had to deal with. I was curious about the TPP.
The question was, this woman lives in Jefferson Park, and was saying she has never heard of the neighborhood preservation zone. So I was just saying that is good to know, because that's something we can do in terms of some neighborhood education and outreach. We can definitely share information about that. And I should say there's one more on here, maybe it wasn't in place when we last used the slide, but there's also a neighborhood preservation zone in Rincon Heights and Idle.
Does that include the TDP towers as well? They're now got an exemption to go through Jefferson Park?
I don't think those are reviewed for the current
Yes,
residential
they
development.
are, we had a meeting.
Okay,
And I don't know how that happened, because they went to 9 rooms, they got a special exception, they're going to get huge towers running from our neighborhoods.
right, so that is a special exception process, that was granted by mayor and council. a couple weeks ago. When,
They failed to inform the neighborhood association.
Well, what happens if a developer is asking for an exception or the language you use? And they go to the neighborhood association and the neighborhood says, ooh, yeah, hate it. What happens then?
a great question. So Randy's question was, what if somebody has a neighborhood meeting for a special exception, and the neighborhood doesn't like it? That is a great question. So basically, every application has to submit to Planning and Development Services a summary of that neighborhood meeting. And it should include when the meeting was held, what they shared with the neighborhood, what that feedback was. So that's feedback that then we review and take a look at, what were some of the questions that came up and concerns. So one thing that can happen is that if we see, there was a lot of concerns about landscaping and buffering on this second, people really wanted it to be stepped out from the neighborhood, for example. We could actually create conditions and put a condition on that approval saying, yes, this is approved, but you must do 10 or 20 feet of landscaping between you and the neighborhood, or build a wall or fence if that's something the neighborhood's asking for. So that's actually, that input does come to our department and is then part of our conversation with that.
Can the neighborhood give the input directly instead of relying on them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another great point. So the question was, can the neighborhoods give directive? But actually, yes, and you should then be notified, not just of the neighborhood meeting, but by any public hearing. So public hearing with the zoning examiner and with the planning commission goes to the neighborhood, and that's actually something you can give them direct feedback or to the zoning examiner or planning commission. So yes, absolutely, that's ways to give direct feedback.
What's the email to send that to?
To send feedback.
Yeah.
So, it would depend on the specific proposal, but the most important thing, I should have said this earlier, the most important thing you can do to make sure you get notified of these types of developments and opportunities for input is to make sure you have updated officer information with our department, with Rebecca and Chris, and they can get that information from you, but we rely on that, as do the property owners when they're mailing out notices for those neighborhood meetings, is we use whatever contact information we have on file for your neighborhood association officers. So that's really the best.
Do you have a phone number to get that email?
So you would want to email Rebecca and Chris to, and it's neighborhoods, is that it? Neighborhoods, yeah, we'll share that contact information. Yeah.
So who would the neighborhood speak to after development has already started? And they said that they talked to the neighborhood association, but they never did.
So the
What's
question,
happening in our neighborhood right now, so I would like to know who's supposed to speak to about that.
the question is who to talk to after development's already started. If something's not happening that was agreed to.
Well, that's the problem, you were never approached.
Okay. So there's a couple things, I will say to that, which is one, that's where sometimes it's our inspection team. So if there's construction happening that you don't think was permitted or is not happening according to plans, we would definitely want to know that. So our building inspectors can take a very close look. If there's supposed to be planting or landscaping and it's not happening, we would actually inspect for that. And we can let them know you need to do that before the development's
The
finished.
problem is, it's the whole development. And nobody was told about it.
So not all development has to go through one of these processes. These are for what's called a change of zoning or a special exception. If zoning is already in place, for example, commercial zoning to allow a commercial use or an apartment building, that can be built without further notification. So it could be one of those types of
I
developments.
did speak to the person from housing. They talked to a lot of people and they talked to the neighbors association, and I said, I think your partner, nobody came to us. That's what I'm trying to get across, nobody came to us. And I lived within the block and a half from back to their office.
Okay. I think we should talk about this to make sure we get your address and information, so we can look into that and see what's meant to happen there. So, but I do want to make that point that if you think work is happening that wasn't permitted, definitely let us know. That could be something for our inspection team to look at, and or our code enforcement team if there's work happening without permit.
I just have a question about the Grant Rose.
Mhm.
Um,
So is that's not considered a special district, that would just be something that,
It depends what part of Grand Road. We do have a special district that goes from Oracle to, Hope Park, and that is a Grand Road overlay district.
because it's, the interesting thing about Grant Road is there are not a lot of residential properties that are along Grant Road, but there are some. And so, I'm looking at the preserved neighborhood character for taking, parts of Grant Road. So, but that doesn't, because that's a separate,
It was a what district you're in, you know, where the site is that you're thinking of when you're in the Grand Road and just what regulations would apply. So, perhaps we get,
it's in the last part of Grant Road.
okay, the phase that's currently under construction.
No, the phase that's supposed to be, yeah.
They forgot it.
I think that's two square lots. Yeah. So would that be part of it, or that would not be part of it?
So the roadway project itself is not going to bring like a development of permitting process. It goes through a process with transportation. I know they did have a neighborhood advisory board that was meeting for some time, but I'm not sure, you know, some of the status of that. Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry, yes.
Yeah, I wonder now about this issue, which is really new about having water. This is part of that. This is a certain way for the general management and development.
The large water reservoir that you're talking about that was adopted by Mayor and Council earlier this week. That's actually a water policy. So Tucson Water, which is our water utility, developed that policy. It will now be in place for large water users. So any water user at a certain volume, I don't have the number in mind, will have to have sort of a plan for conserving water, and there's certain policies in place for those water users. That's not something regulated by our movements, but it's through the water department.
Oh, that's what I wanted to know. We didn't stop and that is just, it's a real issue as far as.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And land use regulations for data centers is something we're going to be looking at in our departments. Okay, I want to touch on one other kind of special district that some of your neighborhoods may work with, which is historic preservation zones. We have 5 historic preservation zones in the city, as well as a number of local historic landmarks. And in these neighborhoods, there's actually specific design regulations for development, and they go through a design review process through a local board as well as our citywide historic commission. And our historic preservation team also coordinates sometimes with our national register districts. So some of your districts might be national register, which is not a local zoning regulation, but does provide some benefits for national register and district property owners. And we also do a lot of work with other city departments on city-owned historic resources. Okay. I think we're doing a lot of questions about that section. So I want to go ahead, right over here.
I want to know how you can preserve neighborhood character when you encourage infill, and then you have this new model housing thing that's coming down. How can you preserve our neighborhoods, because our barrios are now in terrible danger, because most of them are within a mile of downtown, and now we're talking about expanding it. So how can you preserve what we have by what you're doing?
So the question is how to preserve neighborhood character while still allowing infill development. Yeah, that's a great question, and something we're definitely looking at with the middle housing code amendment. You mentioned middle housing, but we have a lot of other tools for infill as well, accessory dwelling units, etc. So one thing, I'll share an example. One thing we did with accessory dwelling units is that code was adopted about 3 years ago to make it easier for people to build citas or ADUs. And then we did a design competition to get ideas for designs of casitas that would match our local character and fit in with Tucson neighborhoods. And we actually had a local group of community members and our design judging panel to select those designs. And those are not part of a model plan library of model plans that our community has selected as designs that people feel reflect the character of Tucson neighborhoods. So that's just one example. And that's something we're going to look at doing with middle housing as well, is adding to that model plan library so that we have designs of middle housing that people feel reflect the character of our neighborhoods. Rob.
There was a meeting here, back in Hop Hop, when the legislation first came out. And there was a good group of people in discussion. And it seemed to us that, the voters were being targeted for this middle, even the downtown proximity. So one overwhelming recommendation was that you expand it citywide, but then I'm thinking if it's legislation from the state, does the city, can you do that? And what would have to happen?
Great point. Rob's point was about taking our middle housing regulations citywide, so it isn't just as much pressure into certain neighborhoods. And that's a great point, and that is something we're looking at. That's one of the reasons that we did go beyond the minimum requirement from the state in this first phase of putting those regulations in place. We did go and look at a larger area and looked at, what neighborhoods would that be appropriate in. So we are going beyond the state minimum. And then we definitely see interest in going citywide in the near future. So I see this as step one, the middle housing regulations that are being discussed in the court right now. And definitely want to look at how to take those regulations citywide in the near future. All right. I'm just briefly on the development side, some of the development services we provide at PDSD. What are the goals when we're doing development review? We're looking at how to, again, we're back to the mission, protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents, implement our general plan, guide growth and redevelopment, use land efficiently, reduce public hazards, protect natural, cultural, and historic resources, support economic stability, and ensure that we look at our services, infrastructure, constraints, etc. So, it's maybe a little hard to see, but who here has ever had to get a building permit? Anyone? Or helped a neighbor who needs to get one? Okay, lots of folks. So we've tried to really make it easier for folks who are coming in to get building permits. With this flowchart, this is kind of an example of the types of handouts and materials we're really trying to create for customers to make it a lot simpler. Because I don't know about you, but when I had to get a building permit for my own department, I had questions and there were things I wasn't sure what steps to take. Oh, and thank you, Rebecca. She's showing off copies. We have copies of this handout in the back if you'd like to take one home with you. Oh, some folks picked it up. Awesome. So we're really trying to create materials like customer resources to break down the process and make it really easy step by step. Steps like getting a permit. We want to do this partially to make it easier so people to get permits, whether they're doing work at home that requires a permit. We have a permit dashboard on our website that reports on how we're doing in meeting the review timeframe that we have set for ourselves as targets for different types of permits. So this is basically our scorecard of how we're doing as a department. This is it is updated every day and reports on the last 30 days of any applications that we've received. So you can see right now we're hitting about 87% on time rate for permit reviews. We have different types of permits that you'll see in different lanes. Our express lane is our one-day permitting for a lot of our residential solar permits. Certain electrical reconnect permits and trade permits in your house fall into that category. Our fast lane is 7 to 15 day reviews, and our standard lane is 30-day reviews for larger scale projects. We do have an information counter that is open to the public 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This is at our office and 201 North Stone, so the Public Works Building in downtown Tucson. And we have staff there for, again, 4 days a week to answer any questions that folks may have about permitting, including planning and development services, our department, water, transportation, and other aspects.
Does that include our parks?
The question is, does it include parks? Parks is not part of the Tucson Development Center. They don't do permitting. I know they have a few, services. Are you thinking to like make reservations?
Well, I was gonna have a question about water.
Okay, so the Parks Department is not part of Tucson Development Center, but the water department is. So if it's about water service to your house, like doing, having a water meter, something like that, you could come to our development center.
Does that involve permits for casitas?
Yes, that question is, does this involve permits for casitas? Yes, absolutely. Come to our counter and ask questions about casita permits. We have a handy handouts and user guides on how to build a casita. Yeah.
We've been there when it first opened and now it's kind of stayed. The people that work there don't know where everything is. And a lot of the buildings empty, you know, and so we've been chasing like, oh, well, this way and then this way and this way and the wrong phone numbers even. And then someone will, let me look that up for you. And so maybe they could have some concierge person at the door or something. You know, where are you looking? What floor did you want?
So sometimes people don't know what floor people should go to for different meetings we have here. So just had questions at the counter that they couldn't answer. So there should be a concierge. I like that term. We call it just our welcome desk, but I like concierge. We always have someone who's there, usually we have someone there who can help people by saying, what is your question? Is it zoning or is it water? And then we get people in the right queue for the different departments that are there. But that's good feedback. So we can make sure that our staff at the counter, you know, can really ask questions and make sure people, if they're going to a different floor in our building, give them the right directions. What to hear. Definitely encourage you to visit if you have questions about permitting. And also, we do have a way to contact us over phone and email as well. TDC Online. So this is our permitting system. All of our permits are submitted electronically through this portal. So this is where you would, getting a permit, you would create an account and submit your documents so that you can have your plans reviewed and then get that permit issued. So everything is online. We actually have an online navigator that does help people figure out what permitting is. So this is a navigator that asks you a few questions as we go through it, and it will guide you to what permitting you need. So it'll say, you know, are you building a new development or doing rehab? Are you doing commercial or residential? And it will take you through those steps so that you can then figure out, okay, I need a residential addition alteration permit, or I need a residential trade permit for my AC system, etc. So this can be very helpful. It's a great tool for folks as you are navigating our process and figuring out our permitting system. We also have what's called Pro Property Research Online. This is a good way to look up information about parcels. You can look up any parcel in the city and find out the zoning, any special overlays or regulations. You can see it also tells you what registered neighborhood you're in. So you can see that for any property in the city, what ward you're in, etc. So this is another great tool we have. Map Tucson.
I've used something similar to property research, and somehow maybe it was me, I hit the wrong button. But I ended up going to a commercial service that wants to charge you for these records, and not sure how, just a heads up. Okay, there are tons of, and I hit the wrong one, so maybe the link to be helpful here.
Okay, sure thing. She had the wrong button and it took her to a commercial service that wanted to charge for this type of
$30
information.
a month, you know, it's $30.
And that could be, there's a lot of commercial services out there. So maybe Google, you might have to be careful and make sure you're going to Pro, which is a city website. And all the information is free and accessible to the public. Map Tucson. So Map Tucson is another great resource. This is a way to, you can look at aerial views of properties, look at zoning, what ward you're in. Somebody asked earlier, how do I know if I'm in an area or neighborhood plan? Map Tucson would be the resource for that, where you can look up any address and you can see whether it's in an area or neighborhood plan by selecting that layer in the map. To see exactly what area or neighborhood plan you're in, and actually even includes a link to that plan. So you can click on that and go straight to that neighborhood plan. Okay. Any questions on those resources?
I'm wondering if you have a link on there when people are concerned. I know somebody said, what happens if you feel the development is not following the agreements? Or I know that some people have had concerns about specific developers that they feel are gaming the system and not developing along the high standards that Tucson wants. How does one report things like that and actually get results and respect follow-up?
Great question. So the question is, how do you report a concern about a certain property? There is a tool for it. It's called 311 or C-Click Fix. Does anybody use this C-Click Fix? No? Awesome. Okay. So what you would do is you could submit a code enforcement complaint, and then we can investigate and look into, is there work happening without a permit? Is there work happening that doesn't match the zoning regulations on that property? So C-Click Fix is the best way to report them, where it's property specific.
And just as a follow-on to that question, wouldn't, inspections occur?
Yes, absolutely. She was asking, is there a way for citizens to report them? But absolutely, our inspections should be identifying if there's issues with the development during the development process. But if it's something that's already been built and you have concerns, C-Click Fix is a good way to report them.
Shouldn't they have an inspector? And they have a number to the inspector in case they have some issues with the
For a
development?
neighborhood, would a neighborhood have a way to contact the inspector or something?
Yeah, so she told her to call 311. But what if, she can't get a hold of anybody through 311? Would there be an inspector involved with whatever's getting built?
So yes, there are inspections. And I mean, I think the best way that if something is in inspections, like it's not finished yet, it's under development. The best thing to do if you have concerns is contact our department, Planning and Development Services directly, because that means Clayton, his inspectors are going out there, they probably have a good sense of what's happening. And they would want to know if neighbors feel there's development happening that is not according to the plans and what was agreed upon. Yeah, so contact us, absolutely, or through C-Click Fix.
Do we have access, can average Joe see their plans?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So the question is, can you see plans? In Pro, Property Research Online, you can actually look at permits that have been issued and see a permit when it's been issued. Absolutely. So that's a good way to know if you're wondering, was this permitted? I see development activity on this corner. I don't know what's happening. Is it commercial or coffee shops? What is it? You can actually go in Pro and see what that development is.
Do all these different departments like transportation and you guys, do they actually know what's going on? Because I mean, could you have a transportation department authorizing something that isn't approved by the city plan and they're going ahead with it, and then you wouldn't even know about it?
So you're asking about coordination?
Yeah,
City departments?
yeah, I wonder about that.
We coordinate a lot. There might still be some gaps sometimes. There always can be, but we do coordinate very closely with Department of Transportation. We were looking at neighborhood plans of certain parts of the city. We always involve transportation and vice versa. They usually consult with us. But if you see something where you're like, this seems like it might be a gap, please let us know.
Yeah, I see something.
Yeah,
All right.
but we definitely try to proactively collaborate with the department.
So who would we contact?
Well, we're waiting for the email.
Oh, I see.
They're gonna give us the.
You're looking for an email address for our department? Yeah, there's always email PDSD inquiries. That's potential for our entire department. PDSD inquiries at TucsonAC.gov. That we have a neighborhood email address. That's what I think Rebecca said she was going to share very shortly. In fact, I think now is the time. Rebecca's going to share a little bit about the neighborhood resources, neighborhood services section, and what they've been working on.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for sharing your time tonight. You're putting so much volunteer time. It's amazing. Thank you ever so much. First, before we start on the slides, I'd just like to ask you a couple of questions. How many of you have been actively involved in your neighborhood association for 10 years or more? That's wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Let's give them a hand. It's just amazing. Okay, 5 to 10 years. How many? What about 20? Try 30. How many, 3 to 5 years? And how many 1 to 2 years? Like say 30. So for some, this will be fresh. If you want to take a little minute, or you can talk along with me. But first, we're going to talk about what neighborhood resources does, and it's all on this slide. So we register neighborhood associations, and we help neighborhood associations reactivate if they've been active. It's interesting, we noticed after COVID, we were hearing from more inactive neighborhood associations. I think people discovered their neighborhoods during COVID. That's where they were, and they were walking around. They said, oh, okay, I'm in a neighborhood. We assist with boundary changes, mergers, and splits. We don't have lots of those, but periodically we have them. We review bylaws and amendments to bylaws. I've been doing quite a few of reviews recently. A number of you have amended your bylaws. We maintain records. We maintain the neighborhood resources website, and we regularly update officer information in the online neighborhood association directory. I know some of you will get a hold of us and say, you don't have your latest officers. We're always happy to hear from you. Sometimes it's because you haven't submitted your officer information release forms, but and an easy way to get to neighborhood resources if you haven't been to this site is just to put into your browser PDSD Tucson. That'll pull up to homepage. You scroll down, you'll see a yellow button that says neighborhood resources. It's almost the easiest way to remember how to get there. We are a very popular service. It's the two city funded mailings per fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. A lot of you use that. And my colleague, Chris Blue, who joined us a bit over a year ago, is that right, Chris? Has been overseeing that, and I know a lot of you have communicated with him. He's doing a fabulous job with that. Helping you sometimes design, sometimes proofread. Anyway, we plan and host workshops and information and training sessions. We assist with securing runoff. We assist with reserving meeting rooms. Usually those are in public schools and usually TSD. But we're always happy to see what we can do for you. We prepare and distribute the neighborhood nugget, which goes to neighborhood association officers. And I know when somebody in the city told me they didn't like that name, but it has a reason. We're trying to just give you a nugget of information, not too much, but something we think might be useful to your neighborhood. We attend neighborhood association meetings whenever you like. We're happy to come to your neighborhood association. We also help identify speakers if you're looking for a speaker on a particular topic. And we answer a myriad of questions. It's really quite exciting. And every day is something new, and often something that is, like, what? Never heard this one before. From neighborhood associations and board offices and city departments. Oh, thank you. So we have
How do we access someone to get all that information?
we will post this PowerPoint so you can have it. That will, I think, the best way for you to get it.
We have 152 neighborhood associations registered in the city. Not all are currently active, some are inactive. That's very common with volunteer organizations. You know, you'll have leaders and then there'll be a time, doesn't seem anybody stepping up, and then people will get interested or some issue will come up that we get people once again, wanting to be part of the neighborhood association. Last several years, we've reactivated 4 neighborhood associations and formed one new one, which is Spice and Number. Okay. So, I know a lot of you have heard me say this multiple times. If you want to say it along with me, fine. A neighborhood association is a voluntary entity. It's really important that includes property owners, renters, and businesses within its boundaries. And some of the key reasons that they're formed are to bring members together, to establish positive relationships, to increase communication, to organize efforts to address issues of concern. That's sometimes how neighborhood associations get formed. And finally, to initiate activities and projects. And we've put some photos on the left-hand side. It's amazing to me the projects and activities neighborhood associations do. And people are often not aware or from other places in Tucson that those were implemented by neighborhood associations. These are just some examples. There's art, parks, little free libraries. I love that picture. There's game night, one that's done by one neighborhood association, potlucks, tree plantings, water harvesting, cleanups. There's so many, and they're brought to you by your neighborhood associations. So give yourself a round of applause. Oh, here, in a lot of years, and I said it over and over. Remember, neighborhood associations are not homeowners associations. You all know that. The problem is when you're talking to somebody and you say neighborhood association, in their head, they often translate it to homeowners association. That's the end of the discussion. So be sure to keep that in mind. So if somebody seems to turn out, try to sort of, talk to them and see if what they've done is left over to an HOA. And they think you're going to make them paint their house purple or something. And that's the end of the discussion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you make that bigger?
Make that bigger?
Yeah, make that sign bigger.
Yeah, I'll make that, sure. Margie would like us to make that a big sign. Sure, we can do some plots and posters for you. That would be fun. Okay, and these are some recent events we've done. How many people came to the Connecting Neighborhoods with City Services? 3. And how many Connecting Neighborhoods with Neighborhoods? So one of the reasons that we really wanted to do the second one is you all are some of the best resources about neighborhood association. You really, the more you can talk to each other, fabulous ideas, a lot of institutional knowledge in this room, much more than I have, though I do have some. And then we've done some virtual information sessions, one on becoming a 501c3, and somebody asked me tonight, could we do one on how you maintain your 501c3? And we will do that. Neighborhood cleanups, 311, and Safe Street mini grant program. So if you have ideas for future activities, please share them on the comment card. There are more comment cards in the back if you've used yours. The other thing that occurs to me when Court was talking about the various spring and Tucson, I'm really interested in doing some trainings using these for some of you who would like to, so we're going to work on that, how to do that, bring your laptop, and we can help you work through that. Yeah.
So our neighborhood association has the EIN number from
Right.
35 years ago.
Right.
We're not a 501c3. I don't know if we want to be. We are registered with ECORP, state of Arizona.
Okay, right.
Do you monitor that?
We
Like, if
do
you're
not monitor either the 501c3 nonprofit, the EIN, some do have EINs. I think it would be good if we also did something on EINs. And what we can do, we're not experts, what we do is we bring in experts on those topics to actually address them. So I think that's
if we're not registered on ECORP, you don't care?
no,
You don't
no,
care?
no.
Well, that's $10 a year, so.
No. I mean, I'm glad you are,
Like-
congratulations, but no, I don't care.
Does it give the neighborhood association any more legitimacy?
Yes, probably in terms of some of you need some money in it. I'd be happy to look at that further. I'm not an expert on it, but that's sometimes why folks do it because it has to do with taxes and all, yeah.
Not only taxes, but also fundraising.
And
We've had
fundraising.
some Fundraising.
Yeah.
And I've gone to the corporation. They want to know that I'm
Yeah.
registered with the ACC.
Yeah.
And we are a 501c3
Yeah.
and that has helped.
Yeah,
huge.
501c3, if you're doing money, do you want grants, you're going after grants,
No.
you want that.
How do you maintain it then?
I have to do.
So other things.
Okay, I will, and we will do that.
Besides doing the 501c yourself, what we've done is we found an organization that was kind of going out of business.
Excellent point.
And we hooked up with them, and all we had to do was be on the board member, on the board, and then we kind of took over their thing, so.
What's the organization?
Area of our money, because that's terrible, my financial literacy sucks, but we have Joan and I work we actually Lane's PB grants are coming back out to another round, and we got the money to plant our trees, and the community voted for it. That's what I like. We did that. But what do? Our neighborhood association, like nobody came to no board members came to the meeting, and then they haven't even put their contact information. That's why we're here, because things are happening that we need to know, and they're not. There's nobody in here from our board. So what do we do?
I've got a couple of things there. One is that they sort of hooked up with another 501c3, which you can, and then organizations will allow you to use their 501c3. So we can talk more about that later. She says nobody's here from their board. What do we do about them? They'd be happy to get together with you and we could have a conversation about that. So I just, okay, everybody. We do not, our requirements for staying active are not onerous, or I don't think they're onerous. All we ask is that you send us your annual minutes with election results, a completed officer information release form every year for both newly elected officers and re-elected officers, just so we know. And as Corin made the point of so important, this is the information we put in our database that provides the contact information for you to get those very important notices about rezonings, liquor licenses, and other such actions. So that's super important. The form is electronic, the officer form, and we also want your approved and signed original bylaws and any amended bylaws. So please check that your neighborhood association has provided these documents. Now, I will admit we're not perfect, and every once in a while you may have provided them, and maybe for some reason we didn't see them, or we didn't think we got them. You can let us know that and send them again. And I did not put the email address, but the easy email address to contact us is neighborhood singular at tucsonaz.gov. You can also, you've probably figured out by now that the city email address is all part of the same formula. So you can also, you know, write Chris Blue, his name's easier to spell than mine. Chris, is yours Christopher or Chris? Christopher. Dot blue at TucsonAZ.gov. And if you know how to spell my name, you can say Rebecca.Riff at TucsonAZ.gov. So the neighborhood at TucsonAZ.gov is an easy one to remember. Yeah. That was what I was just gonna ask. Oh, sure.
And I think Rebecca, if people are here tonight and signed up, they will be added to the nugget. Will they be? So most people probably got this through the nugget, so you're on the email.
Yeah, so
And you usually have that email on the nugget, right? That phone number and email.
Right, yeah, that's always there.
Yeah.
And again, you can be there are some nuggets posted on the neighborhood resources website that I told you about. Where, does anybody remember how I told you to get there?
PDSD.
PDSD Tucson in your browser. That'll pull up this department's homepage. Scroll down, you'll see a yellow bar that says neighborhood resources, and you're in Lake Flynn then. Any other questions? Thank you so much. We got one back there.
I wanted to touch on the phase sprint program, we, the trying to use that for speed bumps, right? But what they don't tell you up front, there's equity index in the stack. That's a hard to understand how numbers. And never getting this, and I was never read this. So it was the same paper with me, I didn't know who's the and I tried to nail it down, by saying on the next. Also, that ran all on one. So they didn't take that here. Why would we put that after that? I didn't want to bring it up. I don't know.
Yeah, and so the comment is about the equity on the index that's used with some of these grants, where the idea is to try to help places that have been, you know, haven't had the same investments in them get those. But it's an interesting question, and one that we can look into a bit.
We do have one more topic we really want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get. Thank you, Rebecca. One more topic. Which is code enforcement. Code enforcement is kind of a big topic. As we marked this section of the city, this whole team earlier this year when code enforcement was transferred from environmental services to planning and development services. And we're really excited about this because we think it gives us an opportunity to better serve neighborhoods and kind of take a more holistic approach to neighborhood development and quality of life and livability in neighborhoods. So I want to introduce our code enforcement managers, Lori Tuffrey, who many of you may know for her code enforcement, and the newbie to the team, returned, Ernie Stevens, who is the other code enforcement manager. So, Lori and Ernie are going to share a little bit about what we do in code enforcement and also share a bit about the new structures that we know we work with in code enforcement.
So hi again, everyone. I do have a question first. How many people are familiar with code enforcement? I'm assuming, yeah, a lot of you. So do we end up with you depending where we go on?
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, here's the answer. What do we do? For those of you that don't know, the Code Enforcement Division investigates concerns. Yeah, this one, is that better? Yeah, leave it there. The Code Enforcement Division investigates concerns and reported violations in many areas, including property maintenance, minimum housing, and that's landlord tenant type of violations for renters, zoning, unsafe quarters and structures, and that's, we have a bans on vacant and abandoned structures program that would fall into work without permits, peddlers, and sign violations.
What codes are enforced? The Tucson Code, Chapter 16, Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance the Tucson Unified Development Code, Tucson FEMA Outdoor Lighting Code, the chapter 25 streets and chapter 26 stormwater. And then we also do the ICC family of codes. What is the ICC family? The ICC is the International Code Council of Building Codes. We have a building code for residential, commercial, plumbing, mechanical. We also have a neighborhood, not neighborhood, maintenance preservation. Oh, little please. Sorry.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I didn't see anybody going on. Anyway, so that's what the ICC codes are. So we have a lot of codes to our disposal.
Oh, okay, here we go.
This is the big reveal.
Right, so, well, first off, where we used to have like one inspector per zone. Now we're going by ward office and we've split, I take 1, 2, and 3. And Ernie takes 4, 5, and 6. And so that gives us a little more freedom to move around inspectors. We have 16 inspectors. And then we can just easily move them where it's needed. Sometimes, ward might have a lot more complaints during a certain season than others. And we'll be able to use it that we have first.
So this gives you a sense of who to contact if you have questions in your name counts for this for a second. I'm just borrowing the mic. So I want to make sure folks know that based on the word you're in, you can contact Gloria or me if you have questions in your neighborhood. And the first thing to do with the code enforcement complaint is to go through our standard system, which will go through and just hear about what that process is. But if you notice a very persistent issue with a certain property, or you feel you're not getting the response that's needed on a certain property, that's when we would encourage you to reach out to Lori or Bernie more proactively and they can help with some of those problem properties.
What if the owner of the property has mental disabilities and they get called with code enforcement and they get do not occupy and they get thrown out? Where would that person go if they have mental health problems? Because at the moment in my ward, I have that issue in my neighborhood that somebody got thrown out and he had mental disabilities and is now out in the streets. They told him somebody would come back to offer him services. We're taking care of his dogs, we're feeding his animals, and he comes and checks on them daily, but still, they said, we're gonna come back to help you. But nobody came back. And it's been about a week and a half, 2 weeks, nobody's came out to help them.
Well, she has you.
I would say it sounds like there's a specific address, so we're just going to get that address for you, so we can look at that and see if there's some resources that we can talk about.
Housing and community development.
Yeah.
Housing and community development also. They're useless.
Yes. I don't prefer this, the people in that trust, they're not sure if they're doing it now. They built, through law from Terra, the studio apartments in Mario Hollywood for people that are SMI. Yeah. You might want to check the land trust. This is one of the things that we have a vacant lot, a vacant derelict. Remember 2 or 3 years ago, the city split the proposition. The derelict housing, it was gonna be easier than, we have a house in our neighborhood that's been like one of those pictures for 40 years.
So basically, vacant and neglected
And
structure.
gross and people, I had to say, are you okay?
So what we want you to do then is we want you to call that in. We want you to call that in.
Every week.
We're coming in with new procedures, okay? So it's not just board it up and let it go. If we board it up, the city is now placing a lien on the property for expenses, okay? So now that we have expenses on that, the law states that we have 12 months, okay? After 12 months, the city may foreclose on that property to get the money back on loan. So that property would go up for sale, auction, not sure how it
It goes
gets
through a
sold,
legal process.
but it gets turned over.
But she
And then-
has a house in somewhere else, it's beautiful.
You know, it doesn't matter. If they wanna, we're gonna be aggressive to go after that, vacant neglected structure. because it's starting to become a nuisance. Might have homeless people living there, you might have drug users that staying there, so it becomes a nuisance, not only for you guys as neighbors, but it's also a nuisance for the police. They got other things better to do besides rouse people out.
And I'd like to add a little bit on the lien foreclosure. We call that lien foreclosure process, and that's new to us that we've developed over the past year and a half. And that's another tool we can use for those nuisance properties. Besides the normal code enforcement process where we issue a notice or take a court and report it on, you know, if there is an existing lien and, you know, it's a significant amount, we might use that. We might, you know, go to the city attorney's office and say, we want to foreclose on this. You know, there's just a little added incentive for the owner to come in compliance.
But she told us she's saving it for when she needs it.
Oh, well, that's what we're gonna do. It's just another tool.
So like I said, this is not a vacant structure, it's a nuisance
40 years.
for 40 years. Let us know. The longest that we can probably do is about, and again, when we do stuff like this, it takes time. That's what you must remember. So if you're looking at something, remember, it takes time.
I have sort of the opposite question. Do you have any regulations or guardrails about somebody using code enforcement for harassment purposes?
Right, that is
In our 400 house neighborhood, we have had 125 anonymous complaints filed in the last 7.5 months. And they are trivial. You have a parrot in your backyard, very true. You have a pile of wood in the corner of your yard.
Right. So that would be something where, go ahead and file that complaint, we're gonna look at it, no matter what, we gotta look at it. But that's up to this, the code investigator, when that code person gets out there and looks at it, he's gonna look at it and go, really? No, this is not like 25%.
The code inspectors are embarrassed when they come out. They say, we are very sorry that you got called, but yes, your weeds are 7 inches tall, not 6 inches tall. So you need to cut them down. And we have, this individual has been observed hearing over people's backs.
Well, that's, you don't know it is, that's, you don't know it is, and you would like to subpoena or something?
I'm not sure if any of the records are public, but that's something we can look at. And I think, or, you know, it is a process, correct, for multiple unfounded complaints from an individual.
Correct, right? But we may or may not know who it is, but if it's a very similar complaint that keeps coming in, you know, and we can identify it, we may say, you know what, we're not gonna take this call anymore right now. You know, we're gonna identify it's not what.
So we have this one individual who's been going up and down alleys and easements, taking photographs of people's backyards and curating it. We are.
Sit there naked one
Scary.
I'll never be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other example that was given about the house that was abandoned by someone. So we have kind of the same problem. It's a house built in 1915, owned by a developer who's just letting it sit there and rot. And rumor has it that, yeah, the thing might get torn down soon, but I would hate to see, you know, it's probably too late for that property to save. It is a historical property. Unfortunately, I'd like to see that not ever happen. And I'm not sure whether that falls into your lien situation or what. Yes. Yes.
So could I have been to them now, I guess, and
Well, but you can't live in it.
How about smoke shops in the neighborhood that are selling illegal drugs to people? And you want to get rid of them. You don't need them there. They are causing a nuisance. People are gathering behind them and doing their fentanyl and all this stuff on a regular basis. And we know for a fact because we actually had a homeless guy in our park stay with us for 3.5 months during the winter time. And he told us about all the stuff that's going on over there. You know, selling designer drugs and everything. And the people are coming through our park, going back and forth between that smoke shop and our park.
Right.
What do you do about stuff like that? And we told the police.
And we reported it to the
So,
police.
yeah, that sounds like, sometimes we're going to take criminal protection. If we hear about something on criminal, we involve them, because that's a bit beyond code
Yeah.
enforcement. There's something saying that the person, so things make it worse. You know,
We'll look at whether they have a CFO.
yeah, so I see on it, and I want to get through a few more topics or updates related to code enforcement, and then we'll hopefully have some more time for questions. I'm definitely going to get to the end of the program. All of us will be sticking around for a little bit to answer some additional questions. I just want to have Lori and Ernie real fast run through kind of the code enforcement process, because as Ernie was saying before, there are some requirements in terms of time frames. Sometimes we hear, why hasn't this happened faster? And so we wanted to provide a brief overview of this process.
Well, of course, as you want to start that process, you have to file a complaint. And that's what the methods can come to our phone number, 791-584-3. We have a website present and an online form. You can contact 311, file a secret fix and play. And once you do that, we're going to look at, we're going to generate this, and we're going to schedule the inspector to come in.
Okay, so the inspector comes out and he determines whether or not it's a code violation. So is it a code violation, yes or no? And then we have a little clipboard here and you see at this site, follow-up or pre-hearing inspections may be closed if there was no violation or if the responsible party has corrected the violation. So if that response has been corrected by the time the inspector gets there, he closes his case. If not, he issues a notice of violation is issued, the responsible party is given the appropriate time to correct the issue. Okay? The appropriate time to correct the issue, or to get back on that, we do a follow-up inspection. Follow-up inspection, determination is made to see if the violation has been resolved. Yes, no, yes, no. We go to citation. We issue that individual a citation for appear in court. Property owner is in violation, we give it a citation to appear in court. We come back down, now we have a pre-hearing inspection. An additional inspection occurs prior to any scheduled hearing to determine compliance. Maybe this citation was enough to motivate. Okay? Now it's, oh gosh, we gotta go to court, now what? Oh my goodness, I better fix it. And if not, well, the court determines. Inspection prior to any scheduled hearings is determined. Now the court has it, and the court will look at ours. They will look at pictures or photographs or testimony or statements. They will also look at the homeowners. Same thing, testimony, statements, maybe pictures, and the judge will make a decision. The judge may make a decision to say, you are at fault. Minimum fine, $100, go clean it up. We'll see you in 60 days. I gotta wait another 60 days before I go back out there and see if he fixed it or not. Okay?
So one thing to mention is that there's some inconvenience. And come to these hearings, so things like things that's not dealing with actually is working on in code enforcement to involve offices more in some of these cases as they move forward, especially if it's something the board office had or it's learned about from the neighborhood association. So if the board office or the neighborhood association can appear in the court and speak, and it's often very helpful for the judge to hear how this is affecting the surrounding neighborhood. So that's another opportunity for associations to be involved. I see your hand. We are very close to board use.
What if they're renters? That was just my question. What if they're renters and the complaint is against a renter? The owner is the one that gets the letter. So how do they?
That's correct.
That was just my question.
There's different ways. Some of these are combinations.
Well, they both begin, but typically.
Clean it up. Well, I will.
Okay, here are some of the dates to keep in mind. So we mentioned there is a process, there are timelines, for these. The typical, I don't think is 30 days, but some things we have to give people more time. So for example, we're about a permit, we're in demolition, we have some people think they're going to get 60 days notice before we can issue a citation. Some of the things we're working on in code enforcement, as mentioned, we're in the process of integrating code enforcement to PDSD and looking at opportunities to work more with neighborhoods with our warrant offices, et cetera. So that's really one of the goals of tonight was to hear from you about code enforcement and let you know who was leading code enforcement. And really make sure that door is open to all of you to hear feedback on how we can work with you better, especially around code enforcement. Taking a more proactive approach that Ernie and Lori mentioned, really escalating cases that we know have been problems for neighborhoods, escalating those more quickly through the court process. And more education and resources for homeowners to promote compliance. So we know in a lot of cases, the issue might be the neighbor, the homeowner, the neighbor needs some resources to comply with property maintenance or landscaping requirements. And then more transparent data and case tracking, make sure that our units is up to date online, so you can go see the progress of a case. When has a citation been issued? When has an NOV issued in each one of those cases? And then we really focus on our team, training our staff, and getting more certifications for the code enforcement team. One question.
Real quick question, is your agency or your department the one that sends out the letters that says, you know, your house has branches that are overhanging the alley, about 30 days? Is that you guys, or is that?
It's actually environmental services. Sometimes the truck drivers driving through the alleys, going down the branches, they'll send out like a general letter to everyone on that alley.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, since it's now maybe you and not environmental services, it always says, you know, your name and then your house, and you have 30 days. And they don't say it goes out to everybody in the alley. And so I see, as neighborhood president for many years, I would see people who valued their yards, and they would get this note, you have weeds, you know, this is horrible. I see ladies out with scissors trimming, you know, their babies because they think their house has weeds and they've gotten a personal letter. Those notices that go to the whole alley that sound like they're just to you and make 30 days before they trim all your trees. Really need to be say, hey, you know, it's that time again, everybody look out in the alley, because they're really punitive and horrible sounding when I don't think that's the worst.
Here's the thing, I look at some of these LVs and I go, who is this person? I don't even know who that is. That's one of our code inspectors. I go, if I can't read his name, how are the citizens of Tucson going to read his name? I want to read names on this notice of violation. If you want to sign with your signature and print it, fine. I want to see it legible and your phone number. I want to see that legible too. So when these people get this notice, I want them to call you. And my trees are overhanging in the alley. Okay, what? Whoever, right? Trees are overhanging in the alley. Yes, we got a notice from Environmental Services to send you that notice. There's times already where we have streets call us and they go, hey, we need you to send a notice because we can't write a citation. We need code enforcement to do it, to write a citation. We're just a vehicle to to give you a notice.
That would be if there were any violations. I think what you're receiving is more of a blanket. And I'll let someone environmental services maybe.
Rephrase it, they need to rephrase it.
Yeah, I could totally understand.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's a letter that's to a specific address about a specific problem. You have vegetation hanging over into the street, when in fact that problem does not exist at that address. That's the problem. There's a phone number at the bottom. Right, there's a phone number at the bottom, and I called that number, and I said, yo, I have nothing hanging over anything right now, what's the story? And she said, oh, we just send that out to everybody.
Oh, that's not us.
Well, that's great. Understand.
They told us it was you.
No.
I'm just kidding.
I want to see your.
They put a phone number, and I said,
So
oh, Vernon.
that's our notices. What Ernie's saying is we want to make sure there's transparency if someone actually is getting a civic notice, so we do have somebody to call and anybody can get more information. So I know there's more questions, but it is after 7:30, so again, we'll be around for more questions after we wrap up.
This is a clarification
Okay.
on those trees.
Uh-huh.
TEP does not want you clipping the branches on the high lines.
Yeah, you gotta
If
be
you're gonna
careful.
clear the branches, it's the lower ones.
They need to go
TEP.
We're gonna share all these slides. We'll email them out. Yeah, that's Rebecca said. So
We'd love to get some feedback for those who have a few more minutes. If you wanted to have a mental earful and pull out your phone, there, you guys do have like a question for you. Is there a QR code for the scan where you can answer? Oh, the same foot. Okay, so.
Hi, first
Didn't
time.
work.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. It's up
You
there.
have the code is up there, MNG.com. So this is just general, we love to hear any feedback or suggestions you have for PDSD. I hope you're leaving here, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it's also some business.